Hi, I'm George Gurley.
And I'm Leanne.
We're the pastors of the Harvest Church, and we just want to welcome you to our YouTube channel. It's here that you're going to get to catch up on messages, weekly sermons, some inspiring stories, and some fun moments.
If you see something you like, please share it. And if you'd like our weekly updates, click subscribe.
I've got a message I want to share. I've preached this message I first started it off in the youth. And at the end of that message, we had this incredible just worship time at the end, and it was actually like a watershed moment for worship within the youth. It broke something in our youth group for worship, and from that moment on, worship just went to crazy new levels within youth. And then I shared it a few months ago in the evening service, and again, we had this wild, crazy worship time at the end in response. And then I also shared it with the women's meeting on a Thursday, which is also just an incredible time. So if you're in the youth, or you were in that Sunday evening service, or you were part of that women's meeting, you are free to go. No, I'm joking. You're not free to go. But bear with me. I am sharing the same message, but it's good stuff, I promise. So I feel like what I want to happen this morning is that this wouldn't just be a message that I share, but it'll be something that shapes our hearts as a community, and that it'll be something that sets a course for worship within our church. That we would get an understanding this morning that something would change, something would shift in each and every one of our hearts. That's what I've been praying for this whole week, that this wouldn't just be something that I share, that this would be a moment in our church, the same thing that happened in our youth group, that something would shift within worship within the church this morning. So I'm excited. It's going to be good. Okay, let's do this. Awesome. So if you got your Bibles or your iPads or iPhones or the other one, Samsungs, you guys can get those out. We're going to Mark chapter 14 from verse 1 to 10. I think it'll come up on the screens. Yes, it will. Awesome. So, now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came in with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. What a man. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." I find that verse strange. I find it very weird. It's kind of like just put in there. It doesn't really make sense. I'll get to it later, but it's just a very random verse. For Jesus, something for Jesus to say in that moment. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him lots of money, so he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. So it's a beautiful story. If we look deeper at the story, it might just look like a story about a woman throwing perfume at the feet of Jesus. But if we go deeper, and what I want to share with you this morning is that it's actually a story of worship. It's actually a story of extravagant worship, not just worship, but an extravagant, overflowing worship. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning, is extravagant worship. So if you ask me who I am, if you say, "Shaun, who are you? What's your identity?" What I would say is, first and foremost, I'm a worshiper. That is who I am. I am a worshiper. First and foremost, worshiper. Then a husband, then a father, etc., etc. But if you cut me to the core of who I am a worshiper. And I will worship God through any situation, through any circumstance, because that is who I am. You see, I don't come into a meeting to worship. I am a worshiper, and I bring something into worship that shifts the atmosphere around me. And my worship is not determined by the atmosphere around me that's set around me. It's determined by the fire that I birth personally outside of these contexts, and I bring it into corporate worship. All right? See, Bill Johnson says, Thanks, he's that, Ryan. Come on back. Bill Johnson says this. He says, the only true worship is extreme worship. And only extreme worship brings extreme results, transformation. That's it. It's a beautiful quote. And that's what I want to see here this morning. That's what I'm trusting for. So, a little bit about me is I grew up in a very cultural family. My father was a drama teacher. My mother was a dance teacher. Well, they still are. And they ran a theater in Cape Town together. My mom has a dance school. My older sister is a writer, producer, director for theater, so she's involved in the theater world. And my younger sister is a dancer. She's a hip-hop dancer. So she's just gigging, doing tons of dancing. And then there's me. And I did dance, though, when I was younger. I've even got video evidence to prove it, which we're going to screen. No, not going to do that. But I got away from that life, and I went into the ministry in a church setting. I went into church ministry. But what I love to do is when I read the Bible, I think it's just because of my background, I love to put myself in the situation. I love to picture, almost put the characters on a stage and put myself on the stage with them and figure out what would it be like if this happened in that situation? What happens if Jesus truly said that to me? How would I feel? So this is how I read the Bible. So this preach or this talk this morning, it might be a bit all over the place. So it's definitely not an exegesis, line upon line type of preach. It's a story where I got little bits from it, putting myself into the story and getting bits of revelation. So if you're okay with that, well, if not, I got the mic, so you can't do anything. But this is a story. We look at this story. It's a story about a woman with perfume, right? And not just any perfume. I'm like, this is an expensive perfume, which I'll touch on later. So it's like, she's got Ralph Lauren perfume. It's not something cheap. She's got something quite expensive, and she pours it out on the feet of Jesus. And some ladies are like, why would she do that? That's just crazy. What a waste. But if you go a bit deeper, and I've touched on this already, but it's a beautiful story about extravagant worship. And I was trying to figure out if I have any stories, because I like to tell stories that relate about perfume. And the one I could think of was, I've been married to my wife for about 7 years now. And a few years ago, Christmas was coming up, and I needed to get her a gift, as all good husbands do. And how it works in my family, you got to catch this, is growing up, Christmas time would come, and before Christmas, we would all sit around the table and we say, Christmas time is coming, we need to get our lists out. So everybody would get their lists out, write down their top 5 gifts that they would like, write them down, this is what I would like, hand in the lists to the corporate body, they would take it away, and mom and dad, they would go and get some of the gifts on the list, and then at Christmas time, you would open the box, and you would get something on your list, because there's no disappointment in that, right? I got something that I want on my list. That's how it would work. So this is me growing up in my family. I sit down with my wife, Christmas is coming up, and I sit her down, and I say, babe, Christmas is coming up, you know that I love you. You know that I want to give you the best. You're just so beautiful, babe. You're so amazing. I want to show you my love. I want to show you how amazing and worthy you are. She's like, yeah, thanks, babe. I'm like, okay, I'll need your list now. And she stared at me and was like, what do you mean, list? So, you know the list. You give me a list. You write it down, top 5 things. I go to the shops. I get you one of them. Bring it to you. There's no disappointment. You're happy. I'm happy. It all works out. She's like, no, babe. Sit down. This is how it works, right? In my family or growing up, like there were no lists. Christmas is coming up. You would go to the shops and you would buy your family member something from the heart. I was like, the heart? My brain can't compute. What are you talking about? Where's the list? And I slam my fist on the table. No, I'm joking. I didn't do that. I just wanted to see if you guys were listening. And I was like, okay, no list from the heart. Okay, all right. So I think I WhatsApped some of my girlfriends, and I was like, what can I get my wife for her for Christmas? And they're like, well, why don't you do perfume? Like, all girls like perfume. Most girls like perfume. So I'm like, okay, cool. And after 7 years of marriage, I've realized that most women do like perfume, right? But I've also noticed that through 7 years of marriage, when it comes to men, they have no clue when it comes to perfume. So, I mean, they get into the Edgars, and there's just like all those bottles and the lights and the pictures, and they're like a deer in the headlights. Like, where do I start? So that was me. I'm like, tons of pressure. I want to give my wife something amazing, something beautiful, show how much I love her. So I think I went to Edgar's. I can't remember. And I stood there like deer in the headlights. I'm like, oh my word, where do I start? Which one? And if you're ever a guy in that situation, and one of the sales ladies in the shop sees you, like you're an easy target, right? Like they're like guaranteed sale. So this lady like makes a beeline for me from the corner of her eye, and she's like, hello, sweetie pie. I'm like, oh, hey, didn't see you there. She's like, oh, I see that you're trying to buy perfume. Is this for your girlfriend? I'm like, no, it's for my wife. She's like, oh, wonderful gift. That's just wonderful. She'll love it. She'll love it. So I'm like, yeah, I'm hoping, but I just don't know where to start. Like, where do I start? What do I do? And she's like, she says this, seriously. She says, okay, well, list 3 adjectives that describe your wife. I'm standing there, I'm like, what? Is this like an English exam all of a sudden? I'm like, what is going on? So I'm like, well, I list off the 3. I pass the English exam, and eventually I settle on a certain bottle, and I'm like, this is it. This is it. Hopefully she likes it. I'm a bit nervous because I want to impress. I want to do well because I'm so used to lists. This is totally foreign to me. And I wrap it up and put it in my cupboard, and a few weeks before Christmas, I'm like, oh man, I hope she likes it, or I hope I bought the right thing. What happens if she doesn't like it? What happens if it's actually toilet spray? Like what am I going to do? So I get to Christmas Day, shaking, take the box out, and I give it to her. I'm like, here, babe. And she unwraps it and looks at the gift, and she's like, oh, babe, it's beautiful. It's perfect. Thank you. Then she says to me, see, wasn't that hard? I'm like, oh my gosh. And that is the way that we do gifts from now on. It's quite stressful, and her birthday is coming up. So any tips, please? Any ideas, let me know. But this is a story about a woman with perfume, and I think a lot of the time we can come to Scripture and just like gloss over a lot of these stories, and we can think of it as a woman who told her boyfriend to go out, get her a present. He came back with perfume, and she took her Christmas present and threw it at the feet of Jesus. But you've got to understand that this is so much deeper than that. It is so much more powerful than just throwing a gift at the feet of Jesus, this story. So I got a few points. My first one is this. And the first point is we have a woman. So if you're taking notes, write down the first point, woman. That is it. We got a woman in the story. And you got to understand something in these times. You see, nowadays it's not there yet, but there's a lot more equality within our society with men and women. But in these times, in Jewish custom, like women were not seen in the way that we see them nowadays. Like they were on the outer skirts of society. They were like right on the edge, right? And some scholars believe that, I don't know if it actually says, but they believe that this woman was a lady of bad reputation. She was a prostitute. So she would be like out of the outer skirts. She's like on the outside. Like I can just imagine the stuff, the looks, the non-looks. No one would want to look at her. No one would want to. She didn't even exist in this society. That is the woman thrust into the center of the story. She had to be in another room. She wasn't allowed to talk to the rabbi, be near the rabbi, let alone even anoint the rabbi. She was told, like throughout her life, you have your place. You can't speak. Society at the time, they placed these rules around this woman as to where she belonged, what she could do. She was on the outer ring because of her reputation. See, but I love this about the woman. Even though society had put all these rules about who she was and where she belonged, I love the fact that this woman did not care. I love the fact that extravagant worship rose up inside of this woman, and it overflowed and it overcame those rules, and she pushed past the rules, and she broke the rules to get to Jesus. And I want to say to you, when you're in love with Jesus, you don't care about the rules. When you're in love with Jesus, you don't care about the rules. When you're an extravagant worshiper, the rules don't matter. And hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying sin, law, breaking laws. I'm not saying that. It's the rules that society has quietly put in place for the church, for us as Christians. So you can't bring Jesus into the workplace. No, you can't. Okay, but I'm going to. Like, no, you can't. Oh, shame, I'm sorry. You think that I'm going to bring Jesus, like I walk into work and I bring him behind me. That's not how it works, you see. I'm an extravagant worshiper, right? You see, I have the God of the universe living inside of me, and I understand who he is, his goodness and his holiness. So when I walk into my workplace, I don't bring Jesus in behind me, but he's inside of me. And because he's inside of me, and I'm an extravagant worshiper, when I'm at my workplace, he's going to come out. He's going to manifest. It's just who he is. Who I am. I'm an extravagant worshiper. But you can't talk about Jesus in the schools. It's okay. I'm going to do it anyway. No, but you can't. Okay. I'm going to do it. Why? Not to be rebellious, but it's a natural outflow of who I am. I'm an extravagant worshiper. Doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter the rules that you put around me. It does not matter. Jesus is going to come out because it's who I am. Family, friends, society, they have these rules they put around us. Don't do this. You can't do that. You can't behave like this. Oh, you're a Christian. Oh, your ideas, your values are archaic. They're outdated. You can't think. You're a Christian. You don't have an opinion. You're not allowed to think. You don't have an opinion that's worthy. You see, society puts all of these things onto us. And what happens is the church laps it up. Sadly, we lap it up. See, the church is being told where she belongs. You're not allowed in the schools, you're not allowed in families, not allowed in media, government, sciences. The very places that God is supposed to be shining bright and we're supposed to be leading, we're told we can't be in because there are rules. If you're in school, it's okay, you can share about Jesus, but then I'm going to have to let the Muslims share, the Hindus share, right? It's okay, we can put Jesus in media, in movies, but none of that supernatural stuff. Like, he's just a good man. He's good. That's about it. See, and the only reason we're not leading in areas of society that we're called to is that we're too scared to fully show up and let God out. So we create a tame version of Christianity that doesn't upset anyone. See, but when you're an extravagant worshiper, that stuff does not matter. It cannot hold you back from letting Jesus out wherever you may find yourself. See, an extravagant worshiper, my next point, always makes people feel uncomfortable. Always makes people feel uncomfortable. See, in verse 4 and verse 5, it says, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. See, the woman came in and she offered up an extravagant sacrifice of worship. She pushed through the cultural taboo, the cultural rules that were put on her from society. And she pushed through that and she made a scene. And something inside of the men in that room freaked out. And they were offended with the extravagance that they saw before them. You see, extravagant worship will always offend the religious. See, because the religious spirit always tries to contain Jesus into a box that it can understand. And you got to know, when you fall deeply in love with Jesus, when you become an extravagant worshiper, people will always try to squash the fire that's inside of you. They'll say things like, "Oh, here he goes. He's on fire now, but just wait 3 years. Just give him time, give him time." Like, I was the same. I was exactly the same when I was in high school. Like, I was on fire for Jesus. Then I got married, then you have kids. Then you got to pay bills. Then I went to university or whatever it is. Like, it'll calm down. I'm like, no. When did that become the norm for Christianity? Like, when did that become the norm? Like, we're meant to live our lives from glory to glory. It's supposed to get more and more glorious. Not, I'm on fire in youth. I go to university, my faith like shakes a bit and doubts start creeping in and I become like just less and less effective for the kingdom. Like, no. We are meant to become more and more glorious. You see, with extravagant worshiper, they have a fire sustained by passion on the inside, not by the atmosphere set around them. And I wrote this: an offended heart cannot worship beyond the level of its offense. An offended heart cannot worship beyond the level of its offense. And I thought of David as he danced, taking the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem. And he was just extravagant in his worship, just overflowing, crazy, wild worship. And it says that one of David's wives saw him, and offense crept into her heart because of the extravagant worship that she saw. And she became offended. And what was the result of her offense? The Bible says that it was barrenness. And I thought about it, I'm like, it doesn't say that David divorced her, right? It doesn't say that she wasn't his wife anymore. It said that she became barren. So I'm like, I believe that she still had a relation, she was still a wife, but the result was barrenness. You see, you can still know Jesus, you can still have a relationship with Jesus, you can be a part of the church, you can be in this community, but offense in your heart will create a space of barrenness that will never, ever let you get past that level of worship. And you'll see other people, you'll see the young people, you see the people on fire, and it'll offend you. And I want to tell you, that's where you'll stay. Just where you're at. That is where you'll stay, and you won't move past it. And I'm not saying you're bad. I'm not saying you're a heathen. Like, you're still in relationship with Jesus. And people will get offended, and they'll say, hey, man, just calm down to this Jesus stuff. Like, why do you give your life to the church? It doesn't make sense because it's offensive to them. Extravagant worship is offensive. I remember Eric Johnson telling the story when I was at Bethel. And if you guys have ever been to that house, it's quite a wild, crazy expression of worship sometimes. And Eric was telling a story about the one day when worship was pretty wild. And there was a lady at the back on the side of the church who was worshiping even more wild than the wildness that was happening in the room. So it was pretty crazy. And I think during or after worship, a man came to Eric and walked over to him and said, hey, you're the pastor. He's like, yes, I am. And he said, well, can you do something about that lady? Like, she's just way too loud. It's so distracting. I'm like, I can't focus. I can't. And Eric said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. And then he said this. He said, because if you knew that woman's story, and if you knew what she'd been through, and if you knew how much God had saved her from, you would understand why she worshiped the way that she worshiped. Because Eric knew that woman was a prostitute that got saved out of a crazy lifestyle and came to know Jesus. See, and there's a parallel story of this story in Luke chapter 7, which says when the Pharisees were offended by this woman's extravagance, he said, hey, and he told them a story. He said a money lender, he lent money to two men. The one owed him 50 and the other owed him 500. At the end of the time, they couldn't pay the money back. Neither of them could pay. So he said what the money lender did is he said, okay, fine. There's grace. None of you have to pay your debt. And then he asked the Pharisees, who do you think would love the money lender more? The man who was forgiven 50 or 500? And they said, well, 500. He said, yeah, see, in the same way, this woman who's come in and hasn't stopped like crying, pouring oil on my feet, anointing my feet out of intimacy, has done more than you guys who should have anointed me out of duty. That's what you should have done. See, and their offense stopped them from entering into levels of worship like this woman. And their worship became a duty. I'm like, Jesus, I never want my worship to become a duty. Never. See, this lady realized the true extent of his love, that it wasn't about how bad she realized that she was. See, it wasn't a revelation of her depravity, but it was a revelation of his goodness that changed her, and it birthed extravagant worship, and something had to come out. That he would cross every boundary, that he would cross like an immeasurable distance in order to get to her, that he would do everything to change her life and save her. Something changed on the inside. And she's like, I need to do something. I've seen the goodness of God. I've seen something in this man. Something has to shift inside of me. She saw a man. I had this revelation, it just came to me in the first service, but she saw a man like no other man that she's ever seen in her life. Like every other man that this woman had been with had used her, had chewed her up, had spit her out, It only caused her pain, problems, strife. That's all she knew about men. But something happened when she saw this man in front of her. And she said, this is a man that does not lust after me. This is a man that I can just see love pouring out of him for me. There's something different about this man. And he's a man, the very thing that's caused me pain in my life, the very thing that I could have an offense against. I'm choosing to look past that. I'm choosing to see the God of beauty and the God of holiness inside of him. And I feel like there's, and I'm just, because I felt this so strongly in the first service, but I feel like, again, there's some people here this morning in that you've been hurt. You've been hurt by the church. You've been hurt by church leaders. And you've got all the reason to be offended. You've got all the reason to hold on to the pain. Like you have every reason. Like what they did to you was not right. And I'm like, oh, I've been through this stuff before. Like I understand it. And it's like there's a man standing in front of you. The very picture, the very image of pain and hurt, but it's also wanting to bring your greatest healing and your greatest breakthrough. And I want to tell you, like, some of you have been hurt by church leaders, but the greatest leader in the world can bring you healing. You see, I've heard it said, like, it's relationships that hurt you, but it's also relationships that'll heal you. You see, and this morning, like, I want to encourage you, if you're in that place, if you've been hurt by church leaders, like, don't let that offense, don't let that pain hold you back from seeing the beauty of Jesus. Don't let it hold your worship back in any way. Don't let it stop you from becoming an extravagant worshiper, because that's who you are called to be. That is who you are. An extravagant worship means that we give everything. It means that we give everything. See, this woman gave everything. The perfume was expensive. I did a little bit of research, and this perfume was about $40,000 worth of perfume. That's a lot of money. It's about $3,000 per ounce, which for us who aren't Americans, it means about 1,200 Rand per gram. So I'm like, that's very, very expensive perfume. I'm like, currently the most expensive perfume, I think, is sitting just under that. So I'm like, this wasn't just a little Britney Spears spray-on perfume that the woman threw at the feet of Jesus, right? This was something of worth. This was something of value. This was something so expensive and so valuable to the woman that she threw it down. And I remember sharing this with the women's meeting, and afterwards, I don't even know if she's at this church, but this lady with an Eastern European accent came up to me and she said, thank you for sharing. And she said, you know that the alabaster jar in those times was also used as a dowry. So what would happen is the woman, nowadays, if I propose to my wife, I go down on one knee, I ask her, will you marry me? And I get an instant response, right? But in those days, this was a similar thing. So if the woman would take her alabaster jar full of perfume, sealed up, and what she would do, she would walk down to the man's house, she would approach the man, and then what she would do is she would take this alabaster jar and she would throw it at his feet. She would smash it in front of him. And what it was a picture of this woman saying, yes, I choose you. Yes, you are mine forever. Yes, I'm choosing to marry myself with you. It's just a beautiful, beautiful picture of worship. See, there's something different about this man. There's something I can see in this man where I can give my life to, where I can throw everything onto him. And she throws everything onto Jesus. And the jar represents everything. And are we willing to give everything over to Jesus? Our pain, our hurts, our doubts, everything. Can I get a keyboardist up? Is Vanessa here? I want to ask you, as much as this woman threw down the most expensive, valuable thing that she had, it cost her something. It cost her everything. I want to ask you this morning, does your worship cost you something? Does your worship cost you something? Yeah, and I might offend people now, but it's okay. I'm not offending you for offense sake. I'm offending you to provoke you into deeper levels of worship. But do you come into worship and do you wait until everything's perfect? Do you wait until the lights are just right, the sound is good? Oh dear, I don't like that worship leader. Well, I'm just going to chill out today. Oh man, that drummer is just, the sound's too soft. Oh, the sound's too loud. It's just, I had a fight with my wife on the way here. My kids are driving me crazy. Somebody was rude to me in the car park on the way here. So I'm just, I don't really feel like it. And I remember I got saved into a Methodist church, and this is just a story to illustrate a point. I got saved into the Methodist church, and my pastor at the time was, he was the pastor, but he was also a worship leader. And he would lead worship from the bongos on the stage. So it was great. And what would happen is if you get really excited, he would start doing bongo solos with like his elbows, and you just get really into it. And here's me, 15, 16-year-old millennial kid. All these progressive worship albums are coming out. So it's like Hillsong United. They're really pushing into progressive worship. And I'm relating to that. So I'm like, yes, I'm soaking to this music all the time. And this is the sound that I'm hearing. And I come into this meeting the one day. And this old, like crusty, out of date pastor, worship leader who gets excited and does bongo solos, starts one of his bongo solos in like, I don't even remember the song, it was like Kumbaya, something like that. It was so like, I could not relate to it. I couldn't. I was like, this is just, and it offended me. An offense rose up in my heart, and I stood back. I was like, Jesus, this, oh man, I can't do this. And, I'm so glad he spoke to me in that moment. Oh. I'm so glad I learned this at such a young age. And he spoke to me in that moment. Oh. And he said, Shaun, what are you doing? He said, I love this man's heart of worship. Oh, sorry. And I broke down. I was like, God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've made this all about me, God. I'm so sorry that I've taken something so precious and I've just turned it all into me. It's all about me. And that changed, man. That changed my life. Seriously. Like, to the point where you can put me in any worship context, like in the middle of a village in some African country, or like the best, most incredible worship band in the world, and nothing's going to change the way that I worship, right? Because worship's not determined by the atmosphere around me, but it's determined by the fire inside of me, and that fire is Jesus, right? And He's going to come out. And like, man, guys, we should... I'm not saying anything because we have a beautiful, amazing worship team. I'm a part of it. But we should be able to come into this building and have the worst worship experience, like with our physical eyes and physical ears. Like we could have like Sally over here singing like just completely out of key. Little Mikey over here on guitar and his top two strings are out. We got Bobby on the drums and he can't hold a beat to save his life. And it just sounds offensive and terrible. But I want to ask you in that moment, and look, I'm all for excellence. I'm like, I want excellent worship, don't get me wrong. But in that moment of offense, where to your ears and your eyes and just your physical body, you're like, oh, this is putting me off. Can you just be a worshiper in that moment? Can you be a worshiper in that moment? Because that is what shifts the atmosphere, you see? That is what shifts the atmosphere. You see, what happens then, I don't come to church in order to have a worship experience. You see, I am a worshiper. And what happens is I've cultivated extravagant worship throughout the week, throughout my life, in the quiet place, in the secret place. And when I come here, it doesn't matter what it sounds like around me on stage. It's actually not about the stage. Like, this is 2% of worship. 98% of worship is what you do outside of here. It's a lifestyle. But you come in and you bring something to worship. And when we all do that, when we all become worshipers, not just a church that comes together and has worship, but when we are a community of worshipers that come together and we bring extravagance that overflows out of us, and we see the beauty and the love and the goodness of God, and we pour it out on Him, it shifts the atmosphere. And worship goes to new levels that we have never hit in this place yet. Bill Johnson says, worship is entirely based on His worth. See, what happened is, as this lady smashed the alabaster jar, a fragrance all of a sudden filled the room. You see, those jars were sealed tight, like you could not smell anything until they were smashed broken. What happened is, in this story, she threw the alabaster jar down, and I can just imagine just the smell, this aroma, just filling the air, hitting everyone's nostrils. And this beautiful smell just encompasses the room as this lady pours out extravagant worship at the feet of her God, at the feet of her lover. And I want to say to you, when you worship extravagantly, everybody knows it. See, when you become an extravagant worshiper, people will smell it. They will literally smell it on you. See, I used to play five-a-side soccer back in Cape Town, and I remember after this one day, it was a tough day, like I ran my heart out. Guys were tackling me from behind. I was like sweating. It was just disgusting. It was horrible. I didn't score any goals. I was like, oh, this is horrible. I got in the car, I drove home, and I was like, I just want to see my wife. I opened the door, and I saw Kelly on the other side of the room. I was like, hey, babe. She's like, hey. And I leaned in for a kiss. And I opened my eyes, and my wife had her hand like straight up in front of me like this. And she said to me, shower. That was it. And I'm like, oh. So I went to go shower. You see, but my wife literally smelled me from across the room. And I want to say to you, that's my point. I want to say to you is that when we become extravagant worshipers, when we pour out the oil and the perfume and we just lavish it on Jesus, and it just rises up inside of us and it looks like something and it comes out, people smell it. You know, I used to have profound encounters with God in high school. And I remember just walking into school and some of my friends would say, hey, Shaun, come here. I'm like, what's up? And it's like, what is up with you? Why are you so happy? Why are you so joyful? What is it about you? And I'd say, pull up a seat. Let me tell you. And I would just tell them about Jesus. You see, when you do that, evangelism becomes easy, right? Like that makes the most easy evangelism. When people smell the presence of God and they say, hey, you, come here. Tell me what is that thing that's on you, that smell. I've never smelled something like that in my life. What is it about you that is so different? Tell me. Like, that's an open door. Just spread the love of God. My last point is this. This story is recorded in all of the Gospels, right? And you have to take note when that happens, because I feel like the writers all remembered it specifically because it was very important. So if you read something in Scripture and it pops out to you, that's great. But if you read it over and over and over again, you're like, whoa, take notice. Something's happening here. And I told you about it at the beginning. There's a strange verse that pops up. Verse 9. It says this, truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. I remember reading that and I'm like, Jesus, that is a strange verse. Like, why would a prostitute who smashes a jar of perfume on the feet of Jesus so impact the heart of God that he tells everybody this right here is going to be remembered for ages to come? This story will be told everywhere the gospel is preached. Like, oh, that's weird. And I was asking questions and he said, Shaun, why Jesus said that is because it's all about him. I was like, okay, please elaborate. And then he showed me, he said, see, most other stories in the Bible, pretty much all stories in the Bible, all have to do with us. And hear what I'm saying. They all have to do what Jesus did for us, for people. Even the cross, the most beautiful expression of self-sacrificial love, was for us. Jesus healing lepers, the blind, those who couldn't speak. It was for them. It was Jesus pouring out something onto people. Jesus giving of himself, God giving of himself to other people. Except this story. See, in this story, it's the opposite. See, in this story, it's a woman, it's us, coming to Jesus, pouring out everything on Jesus, giving him everything, and not expecting anything in return. Nothing. And what happens is Jesus is in the room and he watches this happen and he sees this woman giving everything. She's pushed past the cultural boundaries. She's offended the religious. She doesn't care. She's giving everything. She's seen something about the goodness, the holiness, the beauty of Jesus in front of her, and something has to rise up inside of her and do something. So she smashes her identity, her life, her past at the feet of Jesus and says, I'm giving you everything. You are worth it. And she doesn't expect anything in return. And I want to challenge you, how many times do we come into worshiping in order to get something from God? See, the heart of worship is not that. You see, we don't minister for the Lord, we minister to the Lord. That is what we do as worshipers. That is our number one prize. That is what we get to do in this life. We get to minister to the Lord. We get to worship the Lord. And because He's so good, because He's so faithful, because it's just who He is, you know what happens? His healing comes. Breakthrough comes. All that stuff comes because He is so good anyway. See, it's all about Him. It's all about us pouring out worship to Him, giving Him everything.